talk about something that has impacted our lives tremendously, the pandemic. And more specifically, it's about the screen time battles that we're constantly having with our kids, and also about the kind of social distancing that has happened. Although it was almost made mandatory for us to keep a social distance from each other, that was more at the physical level, but somehow I think we seem to have lost that emotional connect as well. So I think a lot of us as parents are concerned now about, we're all getting back to work, we're getting back to schools and colleges, and it's strange. How do we meet people all over again? Have we forgotten some of those skills? So to understand more about this and see how we can, navigate our way back into our social interactions, and also to see how we can minimize those screen time battles with our kids, I'm going to be in conversation with a parent. So Jyoti, hello.
Hi Arundhati, how are you?
I'm good, and it's great to have you here with us, because I think, in the conversations that we've been having earlier, you seem to be the voice of many, many parents out there who share common concerns. So let's start by having you just share with us some of the things that are on top of your head that are worrying you right now.
There are a lot of things that are worrying me at the moment, but on an everyday basis, if you were to think about it, I think I'm really, really very worried about the big disconnect that we are having. I mean, it's a very strange word to use, I understand, because we are all so connected these days. I mean, we take pride in our Wi-Fi connections, in being connected with everybody over WhatsApp and, phone and those online conversations like we're having now. But internally within the family, there is a big disconnect because of so much intrusion of all this technology and gadgets in our lives. And it's a very worrying factor. So, I mean, I'll take an example of my house. I have 2 children. I have a husband whom I haven't seen in the longest time because of pandemic, where he still is under, quarantine. So he hasn't come here for the longest time. So we are conversing with him long distance on video calls such as this. And then there are my kids who are, as we speak, sitting in different rooms in different corners and attending their online classes. So this continues, day after day after day. Sometimes it's so surprising that when we were outside, when I was coming to office to work, or when I was, when kids were going to school, there'll be a point when we'd all come back home, and we'll sit together, and it'll be like, oh, mama has come back home, the kids have come back home from school, or I've come back from work, and there'll be a meeting point. At some point, we'd have tea together or we'd have dinner together. But now we're all at home together. And yet, sometimes just before bed, we wonder, oh my God, we haven't even spoken to each other a word, and it's night. We don't know how it happened. We're all in bed now. So I think that's a very worrying factor for me. I mean, there was a time when I used to dream that if none of us went to work or kids didn't go to school, we'd spend so much time together. But we are all at home and we're not going out anywhere. And yet we aren't talking face to face with each other. So that disconnect, is a very felt thing in me these days. I mean, I'm sure my kids also feel it, because we do have dinner table conversations about it sometimes. So we're all looking into our screen. We aren't looking into each other's faces as much as we should be. So that's a big concern. And I've been talking to other parents also. So I think, how do we handle this? I mean, how do we get out of this vicious circle of gadgets? I'm sure we cannot live without gadgets, because most of my work also happens on laptops and computers and telephones through the day. But how do we, for some time, keep it all away and then just come together without the stress of a phone ringing somewhere or the laptop pinging somewhere else, and just be free? Earlier, there wasn't so much tension, but now I think the gadgets are intruding in our consciousness so many times. Sometimes, I feel like my phone is ringing. It's not ringing, but I do feel, oh my God, my phone was ringing. Is it? And I go and check. So that is a very worrying situation for me. And I mean, even I have become like that. So the pandemic has changed me also in a certain thing in the last couple of years. And I do worry about that a lot.
Wow, that's a lot that's going on, not with just you, Jyoti, but I think a lot of us, just being locked in with our family members, and then becoming we have become so very dependent on our gadgets because that's the only way we could manage our lives, yes, under the lockdown and with the quarantine and all of that. And now that we are coming out of it, our minds are still locked in that mode of, gadgets and the dependency on it. So I guess we need to just make that conscious, effort to start using the gadgets less, because now we can start moving out, we can start talking to people, we can do little things like going to the market, going to the shop, um, meeting people rather than just picking up the phone and talking to them. Maybe just opening up the front door and saying hello to neighbors, or taking a little walk down. And because I think we are so heads down with gadgets all the time, we tend to be heads down even when we are out there on the road, taking a stroll, or walking our way through some space. So I think we just need to tell ourselves, hey, look up, because I think when we start looking upwards, the world opens up for us. I think, our senses, all of our senses get stimulated, and we are seeing, we are hearing, and we're processing all of that. And I think that opens up the minds and can kind of, counter that block which is residing there in our minds right now. I've got to be looking down, and I think the gadget is the only way I can run my life now. So while, yes, we have this, very intimate relationship with our gadgets, I think we need to review that relationship. So not just us as parents. For one thing, yes, what is my relationship with my gadget? How intimately connected am I with it? Do I panic when it goes off? Do I feel lost when I can't find it? So I think just evaluating our relationship with the gadget as parents, first of all, to see what am I modeling before my family members and for them. So am I able to disconnect at a certain time? Do I feel so connected to it or desperate without it? Right? It's almost like a romantic relationship some of us, share with the gadget. If if I don't see you, if I don't use you, if I don't talk to you. But the problem is it's only a one-way connection, right? But in a relationship with people, it's always two ways. So I think just understanding that the gadget only does things for us, but it can't really respond back to us, is something to think about and say, do I really want this kind of dependency on my gadget? I think we just became so dependent on our gadgets because we had no choice. But right now, we have that choice that we can make. Okay, I've had enough of this dependency. Can I wean myself away from it? So there's no fixed way of weaning. For some people, a complete cutoff, like, having very firm regulations about it for the self works. For some people, it needs to be gradual. So I think just find out what works for you. And then the next thing is to understand what is your child's relationship with gadgets, right? So for them also, it's a very intimate relationship because it's a window to the world, and it does exciting things for them, and it occupies their minds in so many ways. So when we try to understand that relationship and how can we do that, we could actually, get into that relationship that they have, with their children. So Jyoti, if you could maybe, talk to your children and say, what does the gadget feel like for you, right? And try to talk to your child about what is it that excites them, what is it that interests them, what does it do for them? And you're doing this just out of curiosity. Because when you're curious about something, then you want to know more. And that's the idea, because the more your child explains to you about what role this gadget plays in their lives, there's a deeper understanding. And it's safer not to ask, why is the gadget so important to you? Avoid the why questions, because normally a why question gives you, I don't know, or it just gives you a one line answer, but then that doesn't help you explore, right, with your child. So what questions, how questions, when questions tend to open up your child's mind, because it makes them start thinking about, hey, what does this gadget mean to me in my life? And when you understand that, then I think we just tend to become a little more empathetic with them, because all said and done, the truth is we'll probably find a lot of similarities in our relationship with gadgets, with, the parent and gadget relationship, as well as the child and gadget relationship. And then what is your family relationship with gadgets, right? So do gad like you said, Jyoti, each one of us is on our different screens, and at the end of the day, we tend to feel, hey, we haven't even really talked to each other. So is that what gadgets is doing to your family? Or could gadgets bring you together? For example, say family night movie, that can really bring all of you together, because you're watching the same movie, and you're probably commenting and asking questions, having a few laughs, or getting scared together, or getting tense together. It's a shared experience that really holds you together in spite of everyone watching a screen. And beyond that screen, once your movie is over, in the days to follow, you could actually have so many conversations about what you viewed. And it can be, it can be a random point that you suddenly remember, remember this character, he said this, or how this one, fell off, and what a good laugh we had. So the relationship with the gadget for the family must be one of a shared experience, and it can generate conversations for weeks to come, because until probably you see the next movie, and that become the topic of conversation, right? So I think that is one tip that I could really offer right now about your relationship with your gadget, your child's relationship with your gadget, and your family's relationship with the gadget, and make it a shared experience. Yes.
That's a very interesting thing you said, Arundhati, here, because I really think that shared experiences, I think it is a lack of shared experiences in the last few months, especially, that has been a little worrying. Like I was telling you before this also, earlier we used to connect outside, we used to step outside of home, we used to go for picnics, or we used to go for a movie night out. Whenever there was a children's movie, we would just take them out, and that would become a point of conversation for us over a few weeks. You're really right about it, because it's all about shared experiences. And these days, since we're all boxed in with our own, online world, I think the shared experiences part is not happening. And by the time we're out of it, actually, we're so tired. I also have a feeling that gadgets tire us out completely. I mean, imagine sitting in office and physically talking to people, or having a meeting, and imagine having a computer with circles strewn around it and having a meeting. It drains you completely. You're sitting in one position, you're not moving, and you're just staring at a screen which is also not moving most of the time. I mean, we aren't coming on cameras all the time. So it's a more mentally exhausting thing that we are all experiencing at the moment. And I think the children also feel the same, because sometimes they do come out and say, it was so tiring today. I mean, physically, when I would actually go to school, like my son was telling me the other day, it's not like I used to ask them, why is it so tiring? You're just sitting in one place. So the explanation that came my way was, no, what happens is, when you're in school, you take breaks, you move from one class to the other for certain periods. You step out, go drink water, or you're messing with your friend for a little while. Even as classes are on, there are those shared jokes or something going on in the class, among the students. So those kind of experiences we miss a lot. So what do they do when the classes are on? They're chatting, on the phone sometimes. So the computer is also on. Everything is online. But the red flag for me was when I started seeing a hesitancy in actually physically stepping out. So when the boundaries relaxed, when the lockdown eased out a bit and we were vaccinated, and things were easing out a bit, I started telling them, let's just step out. Maybe let's go to the grocers at the corner of the street or something. And there was a great reluctance. There was like, why can't we order it online? Why do we need to go? And that began to worry me because, as a family, even my husband started saying that. So as a family, I realized that we do have this great fear of socializing again, getting back into the social life. So when I started saying, for example, when my husband said, why don't we just invite them over for dinner? My first question was, are they vaccinated? Is it safe? I mean, can we do it? Earlier, we wouldn't think twice about it. I mean, I must really say that we are a family of, great socializing. We would go out regularly, call friends over. So it was a very boisterous house that we have. Our own relatives, there are so many of them, and we all keep coming and going to each other's houses and all. But suddenly there is this fear of socializing, and that's a big disconnect for me. And I find it's a big disadvantage for me because we are all social people at the end of the day. And when you stop thinking, so when my daughter says that, so and so is having a birthday party, but she's invited me to a restaurant for the evening, but I decided not to go. So I asked her, why did you decide not to go? Is there a problem? So she was like, no, it means I have to go to the restaurant and I have to, I don't know whether they'll be wearing masks or whether they'll touch me or whether we'll have to hug each other. Because, once you're with friends, suddenly all those things don't matter. So while I realized that we've been counseling them for social distancing so much, I mean, we've been paranoid about it, that now they're thinking that the other life, is not okay. So now I'm struggling to find answers to how to get out of this situation. Like how to get back to socializing. I mean, we do need to follow social distancing and certain hygienic norms and all those things, but we can't lead lives like this anymore. I think we must step out, and that crippling fear of somebody else actually coming face to face has to go somewhere, right? How do we handle this? I mean, it's there even in me. I mean, I think even when I would want to step out earlier, I wouldn't think twice. It's just going everywhere, going to a mall or going to a very crowded restaurant to have a lunch, with friends and colleagues. Wouldn't think twice. But now those things are not very okay in my mind also. So how do I even tell my children or my spouse to actually step out and, forget all that and step out? That's another big thing that I'm looking for answers at the moment. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's the same with other parents, because my neighbors and my friends do have conversations with me about whether it is okay or whether it's not okay. What do we do? So that's a big concern, how to get back to that socializing, even if it is not to the pre-pandemic levels, but how do we disconnect from this online world, So if you want to meet, it's like, oh, why don't we have a video call? It's the natural thought. If you want to see somebody, you feel, okay, let's have a video call. If you just want to hear somebody's voice, it's like, okay, let's talk over the phone. The idea of physically going and meeting someone or calling them home still doesn't occur after 1.5 years. So that's a worrying factor. And I'm like, how do I get out of that now?
Yeah, I think we're all so scared, we've just gotten into that thinking pattern that, the fear has taken over, and
Yeah.
we tend to see life through fear. And fear is very inhibiting. Fear can help us in many ways because it helps us to be cautious. It makes us stop and think about what we're doing. But sometimes when we're overwhelmed with fear and we tend to view and perceive everything to that fear, then we are bound to hold back. And I think the pandemic has done that to most of us, right? This is a very strange thing that has happened. It's unprecedented. We've never had this experience before. And given the kind of hardship that we've seen, the sadness that it has brought upon all of us, I think all of us have been, duly impacted by that. And perhaps I think we just need to give ourselves first time to heal from the losses that we've all experienced, from the sadness, reading stories about, the reverse migration and, people struggling for breath, literally. Those have been very, very hard experiences. And I think everyone's life has been touched by those very, very depressing stories. And perhaps that healing is going to take much longer than we would expect it to, because I think for different people, it works in various ways. some people have been able to process it and work their way around it. Some of us have just pushed it, into the recesses of our minds, hoping that it will just go away, but it just keeps popping up now and then. So I think the first thing that we can all do is to just pause and think about, what has been the impact of the whole pandemic on me, my emotions? Has it changed my outlook? What am I feeling about life? Do I feel more positive? Do I feel hopeful? Or am I feeling, down? Am I feeling distraught? Am I feeling hopeless? I think that there's a lot of mixed emotions that all of us are still trying to figure out in our minds. And while that is going on, we're still trying to move forward. And that perhaps is the conflict that is within us that is blocking us, because my mind is saying, it's okay to go out, be cautious, follow all the protocols. It's okay to start socializing in safe bubbles, all of that. And what is worst is when you go out and you see others who are not following protocols, and that adds to your emotional stress, right? So while the mind is saying all of these things, the emotional part of us is holding us back. So I think it will be helpful for all of us to just take that one step back and try to understand what are those emotions that are still bothering me, and just thinking about them and naming those emotions. Am I still feeling frustrated? Am I still feeling angry? Is there still that deep sadness in me? Am I still very confused about certain things that happen maybe in my family or with people, who are familiar to me, or about, what I read about in the papers or saw on television? So I think once we acknowledge that, yes, those emotions are still there in me, just acknowledging and naming them will actually dissipate the strength of those emotions. And so that brings us then to a much more manageable level of our emotions, because now, okay, now I know what is bothering me. My mind is saying something, but my emotions are saying something. So how do I bring them both in alignment with each other? And just acknowledging those emotions, naming them and saying, oh, it's okay for me to have felt them or to still feel them. Just validate your own emotions and say, it's fine, it's normal to have these emotions. The whole strength of that emotional pull reduces, and that's when your thinking begins to clear out. And many of the what ifs, what if I go out and somebody touches me, like you were saying, about your daughter. What if I go to the restaurant? What if they want to hug me, but I don't want a hug? What if somebody touches me? What if the restaurant isn't following protocols? All those what ifs will gradually disappear, because then there's clarity in my head. Those emotions are not bothering me anymore. So now I can think more clearly and I can problem solve. So a what if becomes, if somebody hugs me and I'm not comfortable, even I will make it clear right in the beginning when I go out that, hey guys, let's not do any hugs as yet, right? So I'm stating my boundary very clearly, and I'm stating it in a friendly way, not in a negative or threatening way. So then the mind starts working out all the little solutions that it needs to put into action when we fall into a situation that might trigger off a bit of fear. Because there is no guarantee out there as to what can happen, and we have no control, but we can control what is within ourselves, right? So I would say then, just first get in touch with your own emotions regarding the pandemic, see how much of it is still bothering you. And when you name those feelings, when you tell yourself, it's okay for me to have felt them or to still feel them, the power of those difficult emotions reduces. And then you can think more clearly and you can problem solve and you can find solutions, to possible difficult situations that you might encounter once you start moving out.
But I'd like to ask you one thing, Arundhati, because I am quite a novice in this, and you bring with you a wealth of experience and background in this. do you think it is our dependence on all kinds of gadgets? I mean, and I'm counting television, Alexa, phones, tablets, everything, even laptops, our work, our mindset to this emotional disconnect that we are feeling. I mean, if I were to regulate, let's say, gadget time at home somehow, and I still don't know how I'm going to do that, and that also I'm going to ask you at a later stage. Would we be able to socialize a little bit more openly? Will that fear sort of just go away? And then I also don't have a solution of how to stay away from the gadgets, because for me, whether I like it or not, the television and the mobile and the internet has kind of been my window to the what's happening in the world outside for more than over a year. So earlier, when my friends used to, or my teenage kids used to talk about the phrase called FOMO, FOMO, the fear of missing out, I used to laugh. I used to tell them, what is it that you will miss out? But I sometimes feel that now I am undergoing the same emotion. I mean, I'm like, if I switch off my internet or if I don't watch news for some time, will I be missing out on essential information that will help me keep my family safe, or something that is essential? Will I just miss out on it? So then I turn on to all these kinds of news and gathering of information, which in turn makes me more scared and depressed, actually, because I don't think there's any happy news out there doing the rounds right now. So everywhere there is news of death and destruction. Mostly 90% of the news is full of that these days, and that kind of makes us all more depressed and sad and more worried and more anxious. So it's like a circle I'm in, we are all in, so I don't know how to get out of it. And if you could just give us some tips to do that, it'll be like really helpful. And I just go out right now and start experimenting with those tips and implementing them.
Yeah, so I really get what you're saying, because gadgets have become such an important and integral part of our lives. We can't really do without them, but we also don't want to become tethered to them, in ways that kind of inhibit our social interactions. So I'm just wondering, Jyoti, you feel so strongly about all of this. I wonder what your children are feeling about it, and whether you understand, or all of us, do we really know what are the thoughts running in our children's minds about this? And the only way to know is to ask them. So what I would suggest you do is just sit down and have a little chat with them and say, hey guys, these are my feelings, these are my thoughts. I might sound emotional, I might sound confused, but just hear me out. And you can just express what you are feeling and talk about yourself, and use I statements. I feel this and I feel that. Because the moment you say you are doing this and you are doing that, they're going to back off, because then they feel they're being blamed, they feel threatened, etc. So the trick here is to talk about yourself. So I feel this and I'm thinking about this, and these are the emotions that I am experiencing. So focus on yourself. So when you do that, children listen more clearly, because they are in a safe place. They're not feeling threatened or blamed. So then there's no negative emotions coming up in their minds and blocking them, right? So they listen to you very clearly, and then you can say, this is how I feel, tell me how you feel about it. Let's see whether we're feeling similar things or different things. You have different ideas. It'll be great to understand all of that, and then let them speak out. Be a quiet listener. And when there has been that outpouring from your side and from their side, I think there's a much deeper understanding of what each other is also feeling. And you will find that there are so many common emotions, so many common concerns. You bring those to the center of the table and say, okay, for example, like you mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, we feel that we haven't really even talked to each other. So what can we take one at a time? Don't try to solve all of the concerns at the same time. It can become overwhelming. So take that one little issue and put it in the center of the table. It's not about any of us directly. We're putting it out there in the center of the table, and we're saying, okay, this is a problem. How are we going to work around it? And so each one comes up with ideas and solutions, right? And there's no perfect solution, but what works for you as a family, because I think, this is what we call family meetings, and they can be so productive, provided, of course, it doesn't lead to harsh arguments, provided that there is no attacking anybody in the process. You're just listening to each other and you're saying we're all sharing this common experience and it's not making us feel good. So how can we put our heads together and work this out? And I'm sure you will come up with your own ways of solving it. There are no written rules about this. There are no fixes that can be, put into practice. But something that evolves for your family is what's going to work for you. So I think every family that does it will probably have their own very unique ways of handling this. And when you come up with a few solutions, you try them out. Some may work, some may not, but don't give up. Don't give up. Just say, okay, this is not working. What else? So it's an ongoing process. It's not like we have, something breaks and you put a bit of glue on it and it fixes. No, because we are humans with emotions, with thoughts, with expressions. And so we need to give ourselves that time and space to actually work things out and see how it evolves over time. And every time something works, every time, maybe in a day, you connect with each other, maybe even, just making eye contact, for example. I mean, these are simple connections that you need to make. You don't always have to have a conversation with each other. Maybe as a mom, you just go and place a glass of buttermilk or juice next to your child who's, attending class. I mean, that's connection. It means that, and you make eye contact when you do it, right? Or you just give a pat on the back. It's a connection that you're making, right? Or it could be just, passing by each other from one room to the other and maybe just bumping into each other lightly, or, just giving a little high five, or making using a facial expression. And those are little connections that you don't really need to work hard on. It just needs to come a little more spontaneously. But I think we're so tense that we forget how to be spontaneous as well, right? So if we just, work these things out with the children and the whole family, you will definitely come up with some great ideas on how to solve whatever is bothering you about gadget use. Yes. And it's also about listening to what the kids have to say, kids listening to what you have to say. And so your solutions are built on understanding rather than on theories of what is right and what is not right, or somebody else's agenda.
These are really wonderful suggestions, Arundhati, and I'm definitely going to start it. Like today evening, we're having that conversations, and I'm going to be doing that. But there is one other, thing, and this cropped up in my mind. I was talking to my daughter's, friend's mother. We have this parent group, the school parent group, where we address concerns, and mostly it's about studies. My child is studying, my child is not studying. But the other day, she was laughing and she was saying we've all become gadget addicts. Okay, that worried me no end, because I hear that phrase bandied about everywhere these days. Everybody's talking about gadget addiction, internet addiction, addiction to television and all those things. And it worries me no end. What exactly is gadget addiction? I mean, do you think we've become addicts? I mean, just because we're using it out of necessity and use? When do you know whether you're addicted to gadgets or not? I mean, that's a phrase that I've been wanting to ask so many people over a period of time. But since you mentioned theories, and I've been reading up again on the internet, I'm sorry to say, about what is gadget addiction, and somehow things on internet are worded in such a way that you identify with everything they write. I mean, even if you were to search for a simple headache, you'd start feeling very anxious that you have some incurable disease by the time you're out of it. So though I somewhere in my mind know never to refer to the internet for any medical advice ever, I'm just asking because this is a phrase that is spoken about a lot these days, especially the last 4 or 5 months when we realize that we are running our lives on gadgets. What is addiction? And how do we know the signs of a gadget addiction?
Yeah, I think this word addiction is really scary. The thing is, we use it so commonly, right? In our daily conversations, you're addicted to gadgets, you're addicted to this and to that. But when there's more and more emphasis on addiction, then we sit up and think, oh my God, am I addicted? Are my kids addicted? And that really, worries us endlessly. Addiction is a clinical condition where the psychological, the biological, and the physiological aspects are all compromised on, and you're not able to function right in your normal mode. So when somebody is addicted, they're not able to draw themselves away from whatever they're addicted to. There are withdrawal symptoms when it's taken away from them. For example, when the gadget is taken away, they're not able to function. They become dysfunctional, right? And they're not, their focus on themselves, on their personal presentation, their health aspects, everything is neglected. They're not eating properly. They're not sleeping properly. They're not socializing with others, right? So these are normal things that we do on a daily basis. So when we stop doing all of those things and we are only hooked onto something, it could be a gadget or anything else, then we would start worrying about it, addiction. And experts talk about addiction not being the actual problem. The root problem is somewhere else. This is only a manifestation of some other problem. It becomes an escape because I can't handle either the loneliness or the pain or the confusions or these very difficult emotions that I'm going through. And so I distract my mind by keeping it occupied with something that really keeps me, thinking about nothing else but what I'm doing. It's like denying what is going on. I can't handle it, so I'm just pushing it away. That exactly is what an addiction is. So when we say, are we addicted to gadgets? I don't think so in the normal run of things, because we're all leading our normal lives, right? We're going to work, we're interacting with people, maybe at different levels and maybe much less now, but we're still doing it, right? We're taking care of ourselves. We entertain ourselves. We talk to people. We indulge in a few interests. So I think we're all doing fine. It's just, I would like to maybe talk about it as overuse rather than an addiction, right? And I think every one of us overuses certain things, right? I mean, the people who are passionate about reading, they read so much that they sometimes forget to, eat, right? Or they compromise on their sleep, right? Because I can't put this book down right now. So I think as long as we are doing, our regular routine stuff like sleeping well, eating well, meeting people, um, talking to them, having fun conversations, deep conversations, meaningful conversations with them, as long as we are able to take care of ourselves, manage our health to a large extent, right? As long as we're able to indulge in a few of our interests, show interest in what is going on, not just within ourselves, but with other people and things that are happening around in the world, I think we're all doing fine, right? When television came in, we were all glued to the television, but that television brought community together. It brought large families together and friends and neighbors, etc. Right? So the connections were still happening. The trouble with the phone, for example, is that it's so individual, right? I don't need anyone else. In fact, I don't want you guys peering into my screen. That's how it is with the phone, right? So that's what makes it so, it makes us so cut off from the rest, because it closes in on our world. And that kind of prevents us from being tuned into what's happening around us. So going back to your question about, addictions, honestly, I think we're all doing pretty well, unless, of course, that, we are breaking down in our routines and, losing out on social relationships and our health, etc. So I think we're just overusing gadgets, and given the times we are in now, it's kind of helped us manage our lives better. So gadgets are good, gadgets are fun, gadgets are helpful. We just need to be constantly aware of how we're using it, how much we use it, and every day it's different. There's no same pattern, right? So today I might use it a lot more, tomorrow I might use it a little less or much less. So it kind of balances off. That's what I would say.
That's so heartening to hear. I was quite perturbed is the word for it after all that has been happening. So yeah, that was quite heartening. But on a, I know I'm troubling you with a lot of my questions today. I mean, I'm sure there are many parents out there with these questions. But there's also the phrase meaningful usage of screen time that has been happening a lot these days. In my mind, if you're peering into the phone or a laptop or a television, that's it, right? I mean, how do you make it? What is meaningful and what is mindful use of screen time? I mean, we call it idiot box for a reason, right? So I'm just wondering what is it about, and if you could guide us towards also a little bit of meaningful usage of screen time.
Okay, I think that's a great question, but also a very difficult one to answer, simply because meaningful means different things to different people, right? But having said that, yes, how do I have how do I use my gadget meaningfully? So it has its very specific uses and purposes, right? So I use it for information, I use it for entertainment, I use it for connecting with people, I use it for learning, I use it to improve my creativity, I use it when I have nothing else to do. So it's readily available, and nothing wrong with that, really, right? So the uses are multiple. But when we talk about meaningful use, I think each of us needs to work out in our heads, what is meaningful for me? And if for me, meaningful means that it relaxes me, it makes me feel good, I'm happy when I'm with my gadget, I think that's meaningful. But if being on my gadget makes me feel guilty, being on my gadget makes me feel sad because of what I'm seeing or listening to, it makes me confused because then the thoughts keep, running around in my head, and I'm not able to unravel them. If the gadget is making me feel low most of the time, if being on the gadget is making me feel afraid about something, that's when we need to wake up and say, okay, what's going on here? And putting away the gadget is not the answer. I think the answer lies in, why is this gadget making me feel like this? Because then when I get down to the root, okay, when I see that I don't have so many likes, or when I see somebody is doing so great and this person is getting so many accolades, and it doesn't make me feel good. And you know what? It's normal to feel that way. We're all human, right? And to feel envious, to feel a bit of jealousy, I think is very normal. Just to acknowledge it and say, it's okay, right? And to know that, okay, if this kind of content pulls me down, then I have that choice within me to say, okay, maybe I should shut this part down on my gadget, right? So it's what emotions does it bring up in me? How does it change my behavior? And if it's making me feel good, if it's making me do things better, if it's making me more knowledgeable, if it makes me feel that I'm learning so much, then that's a great, meaningful way to use your gadget. But if it's pulling me down, if it's making me feel low most of the time, if it makes me start questioning myself and making me feel, hey, I'm not good enough. Look at all those people out there, how successful they are. And it just pulls down my own self-worth. I think that's what we need to watch out for. And if those things are happening, if it's hard sometimes to work with those very deep feelings, so it's a good idea then to talk to someone about it. Maybe a friend, just to vent out, or even, to talk to a mental health professional who can then help you sort those things out and overcome all those feelings and the impact of what gadgets have on you.
That's such amazing, homely, doable things from you, Arundhati. I'm so glad I had this conversation with you. Thank you so much. It's like I'm now just actually dying to just get up from here, from this conversation with us, and just start implementing that. Have a conversation with my child and children, and with my husband, and just keep going on these things. Very implementable, very everyday solutions, and I think you're right. Somewhere at the end of the day, we do need to look into ourselves, as parents, as mother, as working professionals, and also as responsible citizens of this world, to somehow see that first I do something and then I ask everybody else to follow suit. So yes, thank you so much for this conversation. I think I had a wonderful time conversing with you, and I really hope the next time that we are able to quickly walk across and hug each other and sit and have such conversations in person.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, because it helped me think more clearly about what parents are really going struggling with out there, and what is it that we can really do to help parents and to stay on that journey along with them, right? And I think just talking to you as a parent has touched upon the real pain points of parents. So I just hope that all the parents out there listening to us have this conversation have also been able to take a few tips home, and wishing you all the best, everyone. Yeah, enjoy your parenting, and there will be those downs, but you can also make them ups sometimes, right? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.